tardes, everyone. I hope everybody's doing well, blessed, and enjoying family. As always, muchas gracias to everyone for everyone's words, wishes, prayers, as the love and support everyone shares and sends my way. From the heart, I appreciate every one of you. Also, do please like, share, subscribe, and hype to this video to help support the message as well. And just a quick reminder that the message is now out on book and Kindle via Amazon. For those that would like to check it out, please do. Thank you. Well, everyone, today I want to try to make sense a little bit in what we say a lot, what people have been in prison, and that is basically you frown upon individuals that claim a title. For example, Sureño, Campolero, EME, that have not been in the system right before, that have not done time, and I know those that have been busted know exactly the reasons why, but I also know there's a lot of people that don't know, because they haven't been to prison or whatever. So with a personal story, right, I want to see if I can make some sense of it. But anyways, basically in a nutshell, when we refer to people not doing prison time and taking up a position or a title, we're referring is because they're wet behind the ears. I'm going to give you an example. I did over 2 decades in prison. In my stay in prison, yes, I helped with streets affairs, you know, sometimes, well, through many ways. But the reality is, if I would have gotten out straight back to my town and I tried to get everything going, you know, I would be wet behind the ears. I'd be a fish. I would have to lean on my homeboys to guide me, and a lot of individuals don't do that. Again, just because you're doing things for a Pili, one, don't make you anything more than the next man, the next camarada, right? Two, the Pilis, well, at least in the shoot times, they're going to get their feria wherever it comes in from. If it means allowing somebody they don't know or that they know they don't know what time it is to use their names to receive. You see, it's like when I was a lifer, everything I was doing, I was mostly the buffer zone, right? But I was a lifer. If they ever found it, if they slammed me, whatever, it did not mean anything. At the end of the day, what meant something for me was to see things through, to see feria come in, to see jale come in, to, for example, Billy comes in like, hey, Chino, can you help me get in this neighborhood? Help me get in this yard. Things like that. Me seeing that through, it meant a lot more than whatever CDC could do. And that's the reality. But anyways, for this, I'm gonna take you back 2009, 10. I was up in Pelican Bay, right? When I was up there was a dilemma with Tonito. Well, there was always a dilemma with Tonito, because he was stepping on toes. He he just didn't respect his fellow hermanos, right? And I mean, they're all doing it, but you tend to look more down on it on an individual like Tonito because he has a lot coming in. I mean, a lot more than you think necessary, right? And he still did not care to go into territory, step on the next man's toes, push up crews, politic, dirty politic against camaradas, have him removed, period. You know, all that cha-cha that leads to that. But anyways, there was a dilemma with his own homeboy and when with Sleepy, when they had to do out there in Longo, in Long Beach, to be more exact, right there on with the homies from Eastside Longo. There was two camaradas, Cisco from Malditos Clique and the homie Chucky from Eastside Longo, but he was from Viejo. You know, I guess at one time they were coexi- ex- they were existing together, right? I know Long was a big neighborhoods, all three, right? But East Side most of all. And I guess they were both Phillies were in there, right? They had their crews, they were making their feria. There was no issues. Again, Cisco from Malditos, he was doing his thing. The homie Chucky over here for Viejo, he was doing his thing from his angle. The only thing is, these two homies have never been busted. They got put in touch with the Phillies through the streets. I'm guessing through a camarada that had that direct pipeline or avenue towards the Phillies. And again, the Phillies, all they want is for their name to be out there and for them to keep making feria, right? Who's doing it? That just don't matter. If they know you, they didn't know you. So all that, wherever you hear, it's like, oh, I was right back there with the legends or the Pilis or the Señores, you know, that don't have nothing to do with it. When the Pilis were slammed, they ain't play with feelings. It was it was rare. It was what you can bring to the table, period. But anyways, these two homies at one point, I guess, out there, they had an issue, and it was one of them things where senores can't work together, period, right? That's another rare thing. But basically, they order a shipment, you know, and together they both put feria here, and well, I'll just say it straight up, right? I said it before, it's always a hassle. If you know how the moving jale works on the streets, but real jale, not not pebbles, right? It's always a hassle to crack up a bundle. It's easier to just get rid of the whole bundle than for you to tell them, oh, I want two, three, and them having to break into it, right? So, anyways, I would let to sleepy than anything, right? Know that, look, you want seven, homeboy over here wants eight. You guys can't, come up with a little bit more, so you guys could get the full bundle, which is 20, you know, and that way it'll be a lot easier. Boom, boom, ahí te va, nothing's open. It just makes things easier. And at the moment, even my family were willing to, like, hey, for us not to have people go over there, break it down and everything. Tell them we'll front it. We'll give them a few days. But I didn't do that. I never told them that. In no way, shape, or form was I going to put myself in that spot. My family at the end of the day wasn't going to care for them, right? They were going to be like, we'll get our payback. But I was going to be the one stuck in between, right? So I never mentioned it. I just told them, hey, I mean, it's just a couple, right? So whatever, they got together with their gente on the calles, Cisco, Chucky. They were able to get it. And then from that, conflict started amongst them. You know, it became a competition. To be sincere, is who got the most, who got him out the quickest, who had more people moving for. It was just dumb. And I knew this because I made the fatal error that me personally, when I plugged them in, I want nothing of it. You guys handle your business and leave me out, right? And in this time, I put him in contact with somebody to place whatever they needed, right? And it just became like a headache. Every so often, they were competing against each other, and my family knows, as I know, as I'm sure many of you guys know, once you start keeping your eyes away from the focus, which is to do things right, to get out what needs to get out, and not just get it out a lo tonto. And then you start doing a lot of stuff that careless that's going to lead back to you. And that's exactly what happened. These two individuals, they would eventually get caught. They would end up getting caught. And now the whole prison or jail effect plays out. Keep in mind they're on the streets. Yes, they were dope dealers. Yes, they knew how to move whatever they were moving, the people. They were doing it for a while good, right? It's just from that one time they worked together, it became a competition against each other. But it's a big difference from holding that position of responsibilities on the streets than inside. And they didn't understand that. Basically, they hit the county jail, and both of them were representing who they were representing on the streets, right? There was no reason for them to get slammed, right? So they were going to hit a main line. So it was still in the best interest of the senores for them to be in touch with them. Keep in mind, if I know this, I'm dumb. I'm wet behind the ears compared to a member. They know this. But at the end of the day, the greed trumps all that. What's the worst that can happen? Them having to put steel in the camaradas, you know, they have already that responsibility and ain't like, oh, I gotta give them klechas. Nah, they already took on the responsibilities. Period. That's why they say the fish always dies because of his own mouth. Once you hit the county jail, hey, you still good? We're still good. Sí, todo bien. Just because of pride or whatever it may be. Hey, you already put that anzuelo in your mouth, right? Anyways, the competition amongst these two camaradas would follow, right? And they would end up picking up, I don't know exactly how many camaradas, but they had a couple camaradas with them on each side responding to their respectful pili. And that's when it really started flaring out up in the bay. You started hearing about it becoming a conflict in LA County, you know. And the worst part is when pilis start asking, like, what are we going to do? You see, pilis come and they fish. Hey, I heard you got so and so over here doing this. Simon, all right, that's cool to know. That way, if it comes up again, I could verify it. To a pilis start asking, hey, this is becoming a problem. What are we going to do to resolve this? That means they basically throwing the rope around the neck of the vatos and putting the pilis in the spot where get your gente together or we're going to set them right. We're going to get them to get things together, right? And which is not going to happen. They're trying to say they're going to whack them out the program, you know? But anyways, it would continue to the point where amongst them, they had a little melee. They got them up, and that's what I'm speaking about. You holding responsibilities on the streets to being wet behind the ears on how things are run in the inside. If the camaradas had clecha on them the right way, they would know from the moment we hit county, there's no hands on, especially in a county like LA, where all Pilis got their eyes set on it. LA, Orange County, San Diego, IE, San Bernardino, Riverside. There's a lot of people keeping their eyes on it because there's money there. And, you know, when things like that happen, with the quickness, you're going to have another camarada politic against you. And that alone puts you in the spot. Well, at least the Pilis in that spot, right? They have to show discipline. They have to discipline their gente. It's all good and fun, Yeah, you could represent me, make me some feria, but when they do something out in the open where there's a lot of Pilis keeping a focus on, they can't just let it go. They can't paint that target on themselves for being weak. So of course, the first one that struck was Tonito, right? And basically had a Cisco and his little crew hit. not removed, just hit, and of course, Sleepy wasn't going to be like, oh, you had my crew hit, it's all good, right? Sleepy answered, hey, if my guys are good to get whacked, to correct themselves for what happened, so is your guys. So that happened, and then it became a competition amongst Beelies, a pride thing that you see so much of. And they would hold their position. They would end up hitting CDC. At one point, they were out there in Calipat. And for a while, I thought, hey, they're going to be cool. They're going to blend in cool, right? Because they were requesting Halle, you know, from another Pili, Again, I was just a buffer zone. And, but I guess with time people forget, right? We all do. Just keeping it a buck. Things happen and we get over it. Of course, some of us get over it, but we always have it in the back of our head, right? Again, we're keeping track of our mind, knowing it's our worst enemy. Then there's those individuals that don't have the clecha. They get over it and they forget, and they started their little thing again, you know. And in the form of their demise, it came in Psycho from Avenues. He's the one that said, weren't these guys the ones that having that dilemma in LA County? Oh yeah, we can't be having this. They already had two dilemmas where they're putting hands on camaradas against camaradas. They have to go. And that's exactly what happened. They would end up losing their career. And it wasn't a bad call per se on a Pili, right? On this one. Yes, we could nitpick. Sleepy, Tonito should know. Again, if I knew, they should know that if them dudes never been busted, they're wet behind the ears. They needed to receive the proper clecha before they got given responsibilities on the inside to pick up on things, not to send them down or nothing to that effect, just to protect the camaradas. But again, greed. All they wanted was a position in Feria. But the ones that were in the most wrong here were the camaradas. At all points, if you sit down and analyze it, things were hitting the fence. First on the street, then in LA County. They still did not let go of it, grow out of it, and it led for them to get whacked and removed from the program. And it came from the form that, trust me, I would have thought someone like Ronnie or them, they would have called that before Psycho. But it was an opportunity for Psycho also to weaken both Empilis for, well, I'll just say Psycho had his own personal reasons. It wasn't nothing like correcting things for the program. It was for his benefit. At all times, that's the end look on this one. Don't never be scared to sit down and ask for schooling, for clecha. You know, don't allow pride to say when you're asked, can you handle this? If you don't know, there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. I could use it. protect yourself, you know. But anyways, that's the end look on this one. I just thought I would share something real fast with you guys. With this said, I hope you continue to enjoy a great day. Please stay true to yourself and loyal to loved ones.